For more than half a century, the BBC have captured the changing face of everyday life in Northern Ireland. It all seems so innocent today, but without these moments, something of who we are now would be lost forever. These are the archives, and those were the days.
With Film Archive, it's important to preserve it in and of itself. A picture, a snapshot of how we were then. It makes the past live, it brings it to life and makes sense of it for us.
You know, it's easy to look back on a nation by simply looking at news footage, but I think the best way to find out what things were really like is to talk to ordinary people. You cannot beat a person in the street telling you, yeah, this is what it's like to be alive. This is what I do when I go home. You know, and although there's a place for the footage of the big news incidents of that day, you can't beat somebody just telling you the way it was, because you know what? That is the way it was.
In the 1950s, flying from Aldergrove Airport meant dressing for the occasion.
Come fly with me, let's fly away.
This stylish runway showcased a new generation of jet-setters blissfully unencumbered by baggage restrictions and upgrades for in-flight meals.
Let's fly away.
For these passengers, the novelty of airline food and dreams of far-off destinations represented the very height of sophistication.
In Llama Land, there's a one-man band.
I remember my mother and father going to Nuts Corner to fly to, must have been London, I think, from there. And I just couldn't comprehend how far away London was, because the furthest I had been at that time, I think, was probably Bangor, which was a long trip to me. So anything beyond that, I couldn't actually comprehend.
They say, come fly with me, let's fly, let's fly. Pack up, let's fly away.
Now horizons have expanded, and people talk quite nonchalantly about heading towards the Caribbean or heading off to Scandinavia or whatever, as though it was just an everyday occurrence.
And one destination in particular was enticing a new wave of expats. Transatlantic flights had brought the fast-paced North American continent even closer. For many Northern Irish people, the lure of a better life in Toronto, Canada, was too tempting to turn down, as this 1968 documentary revealed.
The piece of film New City 1968 was absolutely fascinating, because in a way Toronto is a very, very new city. I mean, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, there was nothing there.
And it's to this city, over the last 100 years or so, that thousands upon thousands of Ulster men and women have come to make their homes.
The relationship between Ulster and Toronto is very strong. In recent history, in the 20th century, there was some large-scale emigration from Ulster to Canada.
I live in Tyrone, and it always interested me the number of people who had relatives who lived in Toronto. And so to see this film was really, really interesting. And it was a cleverly put together piece of filming as well, because it showed you people from across all the classes and all the age groups.
And one of those people was Dave Beattie, a Banbridge man who embraced the locals' love of all things automobile.
And in his job, he's
Now a suited and booted car salesman, Dave had also acquired a new lingo.
his car.
They drive as high as 30,000 miles a year.
Well, the first thing that I noticed about Dave Beattie was the accent.
Like, for instance, when I came to this country, I didn't have the cash to buy, say, a television. I bought it on time. That's a small item, really. And you put 1/3 down, you pay off the balance over, say, 12 months.
His absolute wonderment at hire purchase was a joy to behold. And he said how when he went at first he'd been able to buy a television and he paid it off over 12 months, and then he got a suite of furniture.
So you buy a suite of furniture, which is more money. You pay that off, your credit rating becomes good, You can buy a car, then you buy a house.
He clearly was someone who had assimilated himself entirely into Toronto society.
Another expat profiled in the programme was Constable Everett Douglas from Limavady, who had joined the Toronto police force in the 1950s. Unlike his contemporary, Everett had retained the local vernacular as he patrolled his new city streets.
It depends what age they come at. If they come young...
Everett Douglas was a fascinating figure. I must say that I was very drawn to his accent. I never really kind of got beyond that because he sounded like he was driving around Limavady or something.
I just talk into this almost like a tape recorder at headquarters, and they'll tape the occurrence out.
He talked about Ulster as being a very quiet place compared to Toronto. Now, you can understand that. He emigrated in the 1950s, and he's talking about a time just before the start of the Troubles. And as we all know, the place got very, very busy after that.
Belfast is quiet compared to Toronto. You don't get the same amount of domestics or crime, particularly in indictable offences, as you would down here.
We know that even in the height of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, what you might call traditional crime and how you define crime, there wasn't very much of it going on. Now, that might have been because there was a lot of the other stuff going on. But he's right in that sense. What I liked about him was he'd kept the accent and he was still very much connected in that way. And I did wonder if there's a class thing going on there. The other people we see are quite middle class in their aspirations and so on, but he's still a working class man.
John Cross, an accountant, and his wife Daisy.
Leaving home may have seemed a journey too far for some. But for the Cross family from Belfast, settling in Canada meant acclimatising to the harsh winters. And when summer came, the Crosses escaped the big city in search of downtime at the country retreat.
Our cottage from here, right to the cottage door, is about 80 miles. We can go up I've timed it, an hour and 20 minutes takes us to the cottage.
The cottage is a representative of the kind of goals towards which you can aspire.
And of course you just live for Friday afternoon to get the gear in the car and head for the summer cottage.
I think anyone seeing that in Northern Ireland would have been very jealous of the lifestyle that this couple appeared to have. Their general lifestyle, and you saw them having a barbecue and the size of the steaks, and they painted a picture of a very affluent kind of lifestyle.
And it wasn't just the steaks that were supersized, as fellow Belfast emigrant Anne O'Donnell discovered when she shopped in Toronto's majestic modern superstores. But when it came to convenience and choice, Anne still harboured halcyon memories of home.
Clothes are much more expensive over here. I honestly don't think that they're as well finished as they are at home.
She was continually smoking. You could see the smoke coming up around her. And she looked like a dark-haired Dusty Springfield. But she could not get away from her roots. And so she would talk about how this was a very modern city and there were good opportunities and there were good shopping. But she shopped in Eaton's.
The two main stores are right down in the centre of town. They are Simpson's and Eaton's. And Eaton's, of course, is an old Northern Irish family, I believe, from Ballymena, and it's a very, very big store.
Eaton's was an absolute institution in Canada. And of course, there's a local connection because Timothy Eaton came from just outside Ballymena. And one of the things they would do is they would bring turf from Northern Ireland to Canada, and they would include a piece of turf in these Christmas hampers. So you could put it on your open fire and you could smell the smells of Ulster.
Toronto was seen as being a highly modern city. However, a city which was like Belfast. This is what we could be in the future if we would just get our act together. This is where we're going. We can be the Toronto of Northern Ireland kind of thing. And I think that connection was being made.
Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone?
When I first watched the film, thinking about what people from here would get from it, I would say, great sense of envy, a great sense of jealousy, thinking, I want some of that too. I want to be there.
Back home, Aldergrove Airport aided the annual exodus as sunseekers sought respite from the gathering storm. The Troubles were taking hold, and dreams of a bright new metropolis had failed to take off. But while the city had a long way to go, increased air links between Northern Ireland and Toronto saw the arrival of a giant of the skies.
Canada seems set to become big business for Ulster tour operators. To cope with expanding demand, Aer Lingus's only jumbo jet in its own service has been chartered.
It was the one and only jumbo jet ever to land in Aldergrove and take off again. And it was a really big thing in Belfast at the time because everybody that was on that flight all had some sort of relative in Canada.
The Atkinson family from Island McGee are going to North America for the first time in 15 years.
I just remember us all being on the plane and the family, and I was quite surprised when I seen myself on this film after all my years.
I like Northern Ireland, and I can't see me going back to the States to live. But
he never got a word in. I was doing all the talking on the film. And I must say it didn't sound too bad.
Well, I would prefer our way, bringing up a family.
Why?
But I don't know. I can't really give you a definite answer.
Well, I basically thought it was a better place to be rearing a family here than America. To me, it was safer. And you were in the country, and you know they were running about and they could play.
Although travel's good, but as I say, I would still favour north of Ireland over these other countries. So. We actually spent 3 days in Toronto, and as I say, it had a massive, massive connection from the Northern Ireland people there in Toronto.
The Canadian National Tower is a monument to a new attempt to forge a new sense of Canadian national unity.
In the 1970s, there arose this great structure in downtown Toronto called the CN Tower. It's right across the lake from the United States. You can imagine that it's sort of throwing up a finger in a very interesting gesture to the United States, saying, look what we can achieve.
It was like something from another world when you got on that lift and went up and seen it. It was really magic, so it was. At that time, to me, it looked like something from outer space, you know. Having never seen anything like that there before. It was amazing.
This archive reminded me very much of who I was in the 1960s and 70s. I certainly recognise a lot of the buildings and a lot of the places, and for me it made me very proud to be Canadian.
From the skyscrapers of Canada's urban sprawl to the mountains of northern Iran. In 1978, the BBC embarked on a 3,000-mile coach trip with a group of altogether more adventurous travellers.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life.
On board were 21 mountaineers eager to explore this little-known outpost. Among them, a nun, a lawyer, a BBC television presenter, and a 19-year-old health worker from Castlewellan, Mary Hawkins.
I had never been to the Middle East before, and I just thought of Iran as being just so exotic.
Joining Mary on this journey of a lifetime was her father, Teddy Hawkins, himself an experienced climber from the Mournes.
I had already been in Afghanistan, and I had been in the Pyrenees, and I'd been climbing in France. So this was a different part of the world, and I think that's the exciting part of it for any mountaineer.
After 3 days in
But even the most rock-steady climber had to be daunted by the challenge ahead. This remote mountain range had remained largely unexplored and essentially isolated from the rest of the world.
In terms of its general location, it was certainly well away from civilization. What happens if somebody breaks a leg, somebody takes seriously ill? How quickly can you get professional aid? And there you're talking like 4 or 5 days. So it's not just a matter of phoning 999 and getting help.
It wasn't like in the Mournes where, you know, something goes wrong, you call the mountain rescue team. Something goes wrong out there, you have to carry the person out.
Goodbye. Despite the lack of multilingual tourist guides, an advance party has reached the valley chosen for base camp.
Jeremy Paxman was with us, and I suspect that Jeremy, being a very ambitious lad, was a bit miffed at being sent off with a group of mountaineers from Northern Ireland. Compared to what was going on in Belfast at the time, it mustn't have seemed very exciting.
From the relative comfort of base camp, Paxman and his fellow trekkers split into smaller exploring parties. And for one such group, ahead lay a grueling 5-day trek in search of the mythical, uncharted Valley of the Assassins.
Nowadays, I mean, you could actually go onto Google Earth and you could get much, much more detailed maps of Iran and the Elburz Mountains than we had access to at that time. The maps that we had were terrible.
Now, I think we'll have to go, not quite sure, you know, we'll have to go down and see.
We had to piece together a map for ourselves. Whenever we were out in the mountains, we had to do reconnaissance trips and try to map out what looked like the route to the Valley of the Assassins.
And I think that's actually the head of the Assassins Valley that we can see just straight through there, but not quite sure till we get there.
Although we could see down the Valley of the Assassins, we could see the first castle or habitation. The scale of the place was much bigger than what we had anticipated.
As one group grappled with the valley, a world away from the Mournes, another was tackling Iran's second highest peak. At 800 metres, the granite north face of Alamku is one of Asia's most treacherous ascents.
Do you as a group feel yourselves different to the rest of the expedition?
We just feel different. We just feel that we have been given a job, a particular job to do.
Rock climbing is very much a competition between you and the rock. You know, that's a piece of rock there. I wonder, could I find a way up it? I think the challenge itself overcomes the fear, you know.
There's a lot of exhilaration involved in this as well, and perhaps this is what's not coming across very well, is that fear is part of the exhilaration.
We knew it was going to be quite a difficult climb. We knew by the look of it, there's some parts that was overhanging, that it wasn't just a straightforward face. So it's a matter then of us getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, get to the bottom of it and just start heading for it.
If I leave here tomorrow.
Every step of the way you're concentrating, and that's the stress, it grows on you. And when the two of us got to the top, it was coming up to nightfall. I mean, we had set out to do a short climb, and we finished up climbing to the top of the mountain.
When we were approaching the top, it was getting dark. We ran into a few problems getting up, finding which way to go and how to get up it. And then we finished up on just this like charcoal rock. There's nothing to hold on to, there's nothing to anchor to. It was just faith and a prayer just to keep going, get up. There's no turn back then.
'Cause I'm as free as a bird now.
I've seen people that got to the top of their first climb and they just were bursting with joy. You know, it's a terrific feeling to have conquered, especially someone young getting to the top of something like that.
It's something that you always will look back on and say, I was a lucky individual to have an opportunity to take part in something like that, and it went well, so that's even more of a bonus.
it's a great euphoria to, you know, to realise that you have climbed a new route and so on. And of course, because it was the 12th of July, they called it the Ulster route. Why not?
After a month exploring Iran, this eclectic mix of climbers had formed an enduring bond. And making that journey from 1970s Northern Ireland to a country on the cusp of revolution had inspired camaraderie and ensured lifelong friendships.
When you think of Northern Ireland in the 1970s, and that we had a couple of students, a social worker, we had 2 doctors, we had a QC who was top of the line at that particular time, and a policeman. Like in 1978, to me, that was the most astounding thing about it.
People that were in it, I know that I could walk into their houses any day of the week and nothing's changed. I just feel very lucky. I was selected to go on it. It's just one of those occasions that stay with you forever.
I'm envious of that younger me in a way. You know, I'm envious that I got the chance to do that, and I wish I'd done more. It was a very special time with a very special group of people.
In the 1980s, travel for many young people meant a passport out of Northern Ireland and into the world of working holidays. This was the gap year generation of jet setters, and BBC Northern Ireland was on the trail.
The idea was no more complicated than saying, if you want to go off and work this summer, here's what it's about, and these are the things you need to think about. I mean, this is pre-internet, this is pre-everything. You know, we're still in the land of leaflets. The purpose of the programme was really to say, let's go and have a look for ourselves.
Hello and welcome to Working Holiday, live from Broadcasting House here in Belfast.
There were some depressing things going on in the town around then and in around Belfast, and you sort of thought, right, it's time to get out. And a lot of the young people I dealt with kind of said, right, well, you know, want to try something different. And if you're young, you got to make it happen cheap. So a lot of guys were going, well, where can we go? And we're going, well, you can go to Israel on something called a kibbutz. And we're going, what the hell is a kibbutz? And we sent somebody out to go to a kibbutz. And when you look back at the film, everybody that worked on these places looked like mini David Hasselhoffs. And they were all working around with very dodgy curly perms. And these are the blokes. And some very tight shorts that shouldn't have been allowed. But that was the 80s. I also remember we interviewed this girl, but she kept saying, it's great to go and get a life experience that you can't get in Belfast. And she was herding cows. And it just looked like a scene from anywhere in Northern Ireland. And I'm thinking, is that what you do when you go to a kibbutz? Just end up working on a farm like anybody else?
Let's get the ball rolling. Ephraim Gatt, you're coordinator of Project 67, the organisation, I suppose, responsible for recruiting people to go to that particular kibbutz.
You know, we brought a guy in to plug kibbutz, and his name was Ephraim. And talk about a guy trying to sell the kibbutz to you. He was the most bland person I think I've ever interviewed in my life. Lovely gentleman, but very straight and very serious, and this is what you get. It nearly put them off going to the kibbutz.
What type of people, Ephraim, are best suited to working on a kibbutz?
Well, it will be between the age of 18 and 32. Healthy and, you know, fit. Almost everyone can do that.
Healthy and fit rules me out, Ephraim, you know. We'll go over to our audience now, Ephraim. Thank you very much indeed.
I remember in one of the particular programmes, Jackie Hamilton actually being the lucky one that got to go to New York City. And, you know, I remember thinking at the time, you know, what a fantastic opportunity, because that was as different as it could get.
I don't know if it's still the same now, but certainly of my generation, America was the Holy Grail. And it does kind of take you in, and the things, there's simple things for me, was like the car horn sounded different.
He told me it was like going into a cinema, you know, it was like going into a television programme, steam coming out of the ground, dudes hanging out in the corner, you know, those traditional New York traffic lights. It's like a movie when you walk into something like that.
Well, I suppose New York is one of those cities that is a kind of iconic city. It is somewhere that is known for being so magnetic, so alive, so vibrant. When you saw The Presenter in New York, again, it was that whole wide-eyed approach. Oh my God, we're in this massive city, we're not in Belfast anymore. And that came through in terms of the presenting style.
Right, here we are in New York. It's fast and it's a real culture shock. I'm telling you, even the car horns sound different. Now, if you fancy coming to America during the summer to work and live for a few months, then you've got to be very pushy and you've got to be streetwise, and if you're not, you soon will be.
I think it was being mindful that if you choose to go to work and not be a holiday, you kind of got to know how it works and to be up to speed on it. Because if you don't, there'll be somebody else in the line who'll come up behind you. So I think that was the intention, if you like, of that kind of link.
Now, it's common knowledge that a lot of Irish people come out here every year to work illegally on their holiday visas. The money's good if you can get to work, but there are some things to think about.
Well, I thought it was interesting when Jackie Hamilton spoke to some of the people who were there as illegal workers.
Is it difficult to get work in New York? It's difficult.
Suddenly we were in a bar talking to some anonymous figure who'd gone the illegal route. It was quite funny. And again, it was quite, there was something quite innocent about it. You know, that, right, well, here's the proper way to do things and here's the improper way to do things, and don't be doing it the bad way.
To put a figure on it, like, I mean, if you work 4 or 5 nights a week, you can make about $600-700.
They could make actually good money. Because I was sitting there going, am I doing the wrong job here? You know, tell me that bit again.
I think when you look back at the people who got an opportunity to travel, it was always to the greater good. It was always giving people a different perspective on life. I feel good! We kind of take it for granted now because travel is relatively cheap. But back in those days, that chance to travel and do something like that really was a big opportunity. And there was no doubt whatsoever that it was a mind-expanding thing and a good thing, and probably helped society as it is here in Northern Ireland today.
I think travelling does broaden the mind. I think it's good for people to experience different cultures, different ways of doing things, different ways of seeing things. So I think in general for people from Northern Ireland, no bad thing to get out and see the world.
The story of how we travelled and saw the world is also the story of how we used to live. And thanks to a rich archive and the magic of film, we can still bring those bygone days back to life.
Those were the days, my friend.
Now, tonight's programme featured clips from Anything Goes, A New City. Originally shown in 1968, it features interviews with local folk making a new life in Canada. If you've Sky, Freesat or Virgin Media, you can press the red button now to see the whole programme. And there are more archive clips by clicking the link at bbc.co.uk/ni.
Ah, yes, these are the days.